Well, welcome everybody back to LMU's Zoom-A-Palooza. I am Dr. Anita Black, the program director for the MSCJ program here at LMU. Our MSc program, just a little plug, is 100% online and can be completed in 16 months or less. For more information, please go to our website, lmunet.edu/MSCJ. We also have a dual degree program with the law school that you can read all about on the website. In addition, we have two more online graduate programs. The MPA program that if you've been here at all, I've heard that's Dr. Atkins, he directs that program. And that program also includes a dual degree with the law school. And we have our new upcoming program in psychology that is beginning the fall of this year. This brings me to my introduction today for our next speaker, Dr. Trey Asbury. He is our new director of the graduate psychology program. He earned his bachelor's in arts in psychology from UT Knoxville. We'll let that go. He worked in a biopsychology lab for 2 years at East Tennessee State University, where he received a master's in experimental psychology. From 1993 to 97, he worked as a child and family therapist at Frontier Health in Bristol, Tennessee. So actually, he doesn't know this, but we just missed each other because I worked for a facility starting in 2004, and I worked with many of the staff and clinicians at Frontier Health. In 2001, he received a PhD in developmental psychology at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Over the past 20 years, he has taught at Campbell University in North Carolina, Texas Women's University, and also served as a program evaluator and data analyst for the Fort Worth Independent School District. His current research interests are in the field of cyberpsychology, which broadly studies the interaction between humans and technology. Today, he is presenting on online platforms as mechanisms of social support. So now I will give the floor, the screen, to Dr. Asbury. Welcome, Dr. Asbury.
Thank you. Can you all hear me and see me?
Yes.
I always have to double check that with the Zoom, right? So, well, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Black. Everything except for the UT comment, but I'll let that slide. I believe you went to a different SEC school, as I recall. So, no worries.
Yes, just the number one.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this works. We tested it a while ago. So let's see, Anita, can you see the title slide there? Okay, so I'll assume everyone else can too. So this presentation is, let me see if I can get rid of this window. It's blocking my view. There we go. So this presentation is going to highlight some of the research that I've done over the last, I believe the first study I'm going to talk about dates back to around 2005 or 6. So about the last 15 to 17 years, primarily working with undergraduate students. So my history, as Dr. Black mentioned in my intro, I've worked with a lot of students over the years, primarily undergraduate students, which is somewhat ironic because I'll be directing the new master's program. I have advised some master's students as well, but most of this work that I'm going to be reviewing today is related to my students, my research team, and kind of tell you a little bit how this developed. I'm going to end the presentation with some more kind of current data that's not my own, but it's probably going to be related to something I'm going to do in the future. So without further ado here. So according to the APA, the American Psychological Association, roughly 90% of our communication, I'm not sure how they get this number, but just doing meta-analyses it does appear that the majority of our communication is screen-based. And by the way, I actually borrowed that statistic from pre-COVID days. So that number's probably almost up to 100% now. And ironically, as we're doing this Zoom event this week. So I'm going to talk about several studies, as I mentioned, that are related to this general idea that that we can find social support through online platforms. I'm going to start with a study that began in around 2006, 2007, when I was at Campbell University. So those of you that aren't familiar with Campbell, a great private school in North Carolina, about maybe 30 minutes south of Raleigh. And while I was there, initially I was hired to be part-time at the main campus and part-time at the extended campuses. Their extended campuses are primarily at military bases. So essentially I was working at, in the evenings, I would travel down to Fort Bragg and also Camp Lejeune. And so primarily those students that were taking those classes were spouses of active duty military. Some of them were actually in the military, but the majority of them, probably 8 out of 10 of those students, were actually spouses of military. And if you kind of remember the global situation back around 2006, 2007, we had quite a few of our military soldiers from the US that were deployed in primarily Afghanistan. And talking to a number of these students, again, keeping in mind that the majority of them were spouses of active duty military that were currently deployed at the time, they were reporting a lot of anxiety and stress related to their inability to have a whole lot of connection with their spouse while they were overseas. And at the time, there was quite a bit of research on the soldier and the effects of the soldier that is deployed, the psychological effects of that. But there was very little that we could find that was related to the spouses that were left behind. So we decided to assess that. We created what we called this military deployment survey. It involved a depression and anxiety stress scale, a multidimensional scale of perceived social support. And then in addition, we asked some specific questions about their marriage, their marital relationship, in particular, marital discord. And so, for example, one of those items asked if they had considered divorcing their spouse. We also collected some demographics, including the number and the length of spousal deployments, the age, and the number of children that they had. We had good content reliability for this measure. And we also had, so we collected data from 2 groups. We had the military spouse group and we had the civilian spouse group. And anybody out there that has conducted research before, you know that sometimes you don't get what you expect. And this was one of the findings we didn't expect. The military spouse group actually reported a higher level of social support than the civilian spouses did. We did do basically, we followed up with these participants and we asked them about some of these findings, and essentially these military spouses reported that there were quite a few activities and support groups there on the base that they were attending. And so again, we believe that the civilian spouses will probably report more social support just because of all the anxiety and stress related to having a spouse that's deployed. But in any event, that's what we found for social support. But for marital discord, just the opposite. So we had the military spouses that, and this is a statistically significant difference here between marital discord between the military spouses and the civilian spouses. And specifically, we asked them, which went too far, the question about I have considered divorcing my spouse, and that was on a Likert scale, ranging from never to frequently. And they reported that the main driving force of that marital discord was the fact that they weren't able to communicate with their spouses when they wanted to. And so even though, 2006, 2007, we had, I don't think Zoom was around, but we had Skype. And of course they could talk via the telephone, but it was just very frustrating for them they would have scheduled calls in the middle of the night, and something would break down with communications or what have you. And there was a lot of stress about the spouse staying at home and taking care of the kids and paying the bills and so on and so forth, and not having a whole lot of communication with their spouse while they were overseas. So that led my students and me into this domain of research called CyberPsychology, which, as Dr. Black mentioned in my intro, broadly defined examines the relationship between humans and technology. And so many of you are probably familiar with these terms, but if not, here they are. So typically, most communication, well, I shouldn't say most now, but one type of communication is synchronous or real time. So I'm teaching face-to-face classes in the classroom, and we have synchronous communication there taking place in real time, just like a conversation. On the other hand, if anybody is watching this this presentation as a recording, and you contact me via email, then that would be asynchronous communication. So if you've ever had online classes, a lot of online classes are built that way. It's basically, it can be more convenient to, like, a working adult to be able to submit their assignments whenever they want to, just meeting certain deadlines, not having to be at a certain place at a specific time. So we started thinking about this idea of trying to enhance communication through asynchronous means, which led us into this field of cyber psychology. So one of the first studies that we did related to that general idea, we looked at the potential of social networking sites being helpful for anybody that was serving in a caregiver role. So what we did in this particular case is we were looking for individuals that, and broadly defined, they just had to identify themselves as a caregiver. I believe we actually asked them who they were caring for, whether it was a parent or a child or some other relative. But doing our research, as we began to dive into the design of this study, we noted that there are a number of obstacles that are imposed by traditional support groups. So if you live in a rural environment, for example, you might not have that many options to attend a face-to-face support group. If you, depending on the nature of the illness or the special need that your dependent has, you can have a very demanding role, right? I experienced this firsthand when my mother had a stroke when she was visiting me some years ago, and a one week vacation turned into 3 months in my house with her. I was happy I was able to assist her and get her back to recovery, but I can remember those times being, extremely demanding between working my job and getting her to all of her appointments and all the stress and anxiety, related to her medical condition. Oftentimes, traditional support groups that they'll charge for attendance, and so, oops, I'm giving you the findings there. So what we decided to do is basically just examine individuals that were using support, what we call social support networks online, and versus those that didn't. And so when we're looking at this data here, so we had an anxiety measure and we had a depression measure. And so the black bars, the ones on the left, indicate users that were, or individuals that were using online social support networks. We call it high SNS users. And as you can see, they reported less anxiety than the low SNS users, and the same trend for depression. So, some indication that going online to seek social support, can be beneficial. That also led us into looking at specific platforms online. So this was obviously a popular social media platform, Facebook. So we focus specifically on Facebook as a mechanism for social support and overall mental health wellness. And so we had some similar measures with this study that we used for the military spouse study. When we started looking at the research on Facebook at that point, and is it beneficial or not, and I believe this still holds true today in 2022, you'll find a lot of mixed findings about the use of Facebook and is it beneficial to your mental health and well-being or not, social media in general. And there are a number of reasons, I believe, because for those mixed findings. One would be just the varying methodologies that are used. So just the way that individuals or researchers decide to measure Facebook usage, operational definitions that they use for that is really variable. For us, we decided to focus kind of on what we call the type of engagement. So you can have a Facebook account and you can be a low engaged user or a high engaged user. So what that means is if you are a low engaged user, you would have, obviously you have to have an account, you have a Facebook account. You would have weekly usage or logins, but not every day, and very infrequent social interaction, sharing information with others. And so the numbers here reflect the sample that we had, the individuals. So this was a quasi-experimental study where you collect your data and then you group them based on their responses. So the low engaged users basically would log in an average of about 7 times a week, very few status updates and correspondence with others. In the cyberpsychology literature, you would find this particular group referred to as lurkers, where they don't post a whole lot. They basically just go in and kind of window shop. So that's contrasted to the portion of our sample that were high engaged users. So as you can see here, these subjects had daily usage, and they had frequent status updates and correspondence with others. So their mean was about roughly 3 times as higher than the low engaged users. So that was the 2 groups we were interested in comparing. Our dependent measures for this one, same social support measure that we used in the military spouse study. We also included a satisfaction with life scale. And we threw in a few additional familial support items. For example, I get the emotional support, help and support I need from my family, Likert scale items, good reliability with these measures as well combined. And so here's what we found. You can probably expect where this is going. The trend for social support, the high engaged users, reported significantly more social support, perceived social support. We saw the same trend for mental health wellness. The high engaged users of Facebook reported a higher degree of mental health wellness. And then lastly, the family relationship quality, higher reported relationship quality with the family for the high engaged users of Facebook. So again, you'll find some mixed studies on social media usage and the benefits or detriments of using that means of communication. But this study, we found some positive results here. So moving on, about the time that study came out, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Strauss reached out to me via email. He had seen some of the work that was published, and he was creating a new platform that he called Family EJournal. And so he asked if he didn't have any data on the platform, and he asked if we could kind of collaborate and collect some data to see if it would be beneficial to the users. And so kind of jumped right into that. Let me describe to you first what Family EJournal is. It's an online platform that you sign up for, and it's a closed group. So just like if you are a social media user, if you have a Facebook account, you're aware that you can have groups and people have to have permissions to get in. Family EJournal is only your family. So once you sign up, the system, you enter your family's emails, and it will send emails to those family members saying, this is what's up, would you want to join, and so on and so forth. And so let's say that you have 5 members of your family in your group, so 6 of you are in that closed group. And so what the platform generates are questions that are designed to basically just get some discussion going with your family. They're non-controversial questions, so they stay away from politics and religion and those types of subjects that might be controversial or cause some conflict between you and your family. There's no underlying agendas such as political or religious. And the interesting thing about the platform, the part that I liked the most, was that each member has access to other members' responses to the questions only after they post their own response. In other words, there's no lurking allowed. You have to actually engage and participate if you want to be part of the process. So just a few sample prompts that you might get. Describe how you feel today. What was your first thought or feeling when you woke up this morning? Describe a memorable experience from elementary school. How would you define a really good conversation? So this is what the platform looks like when you start using it. This is a screenshot from actually some years ago now, 2014. I had the opportunity to teach a semester in the UK. And so this was around the time that I was working with Kevin with Family EJournal, and I asked my own family to participate with Family EJournal. So Eli and Luke were my 2 boys. Tammy was my wife. And of course, there's me, Trey. So you can see that on the left-hand column here, you have the journal numbers. And so I would click on that number 1, and one of those questions would pop up. It's the same question for everybody. I would answer it. And then once you answer it, it will show everybody else that, hey, Trey's answered that. If they want to see my response, they have to answer the same question. So you can see that Eli kind of dropped out. He had the quickest attrition rate after number 5 at the point, at least when I took this screenshot. My wife was pretty good at communicating with that, and Luke was second to her. So I just wanted to, back when my boys were cute and lovable, here they are back at that time. We were using this when I was over in the UK. So I just wanted to kind of mention that you kind of get what you get out of it, what you put into it, right? So one of the items that we got, one of the journal questions was, what thought was most on your mind today? Luke's journal response was 1 word, cake. So not a whole lot of communication there, albeit I believe he was 11 at the time. And then for Eli, another item that we had, journal item, look out the window, describe what you see. Darkness, because it is dark, right? Sarcasm, I'm not sure where he gets that from. But again, so the next time that we Skyped or had a phone call, I said, I want you guys to participate in this, give me a good paragraph, right? Don't, treat it seriously. Which is what I was doing. There's one of my responses, a little bit longer, right? Okay, so that led us into kind of doing some pilot work for the Family EJournal to see how beneficial it might be if you used it for a while. So this is, as you can see, while I was teaching at Texas Women's University, I was teaching a positive psychology class in the fall of 2013, and we just did a general qualitative pilot study where I made this a 14-week requirement. The students had to log into this free account, create a free account on Family EJournal. I told them that their family could be whoever they consider their family. Doesn't have to be biological kin. I'm an only child, but I have three brothers that are friends of mine, but I feel like they're a brother. So it's whoever you felt comfortable with in terms of creating your family group. We had 36 students in the class. As you can see, Texas Woman's University is about 80 to 83% female, and that's what we actually got in our classroom in terms of a breakdown. The mean age was just over 21. And so, so their grade for this particular assignment was not based on the communication. We just wanted them, they had to show that they created an account, but you know, we didn't hold them responsible for the behavior of their family. So their grade was not dependent on how much communication they had, just that they had to go in once a week and answer a prompt. And then at the end of the term, we asked them to basically tell us what they got out of it, if anything, what they liked about it, what they didn't like. And then we had two independent raters that went through and ranked those comments as either positive, neutral, or negative. As you can see, it was overwhelmingly positive. I can tell you the one negative comment that was the one comment that was rated as negative. The student said that she had no problem with the platform. It was just exactly as she expected. She asked her family to participate and they failed to do so. So, albeit sad, it really didn't reflect the platform per se. So we didn't publish that. It was just basically just to see in a small sample, do people feel like this might be beneficial to use? It did lead to a published study a few years ago where we looked specifically, we focused on women because again, I was at Texas Woman's University, sample of convenience. But what we did here is we had a similar design where we asked these young ladies to create an account and have family members join. And we compared them to a like group that did not have family EJournal. At the end of the study, we provided the information to that control group. But as we ran the study, we looked at, sorry, these graphs are kind of small on the slide, but we looked at over the course, over time, you see the solid line were the family EJournal users, and they reported increased family cohesion over the span of that study, which I believe was about 12 to 14 weeks of usage. And then the bottom graph is looking at a depression inventory, and those FEJ users reported lower depression over the course of that 12 to 14 week study. So one thing that I'll point out here before I share some more current data with you is that, you know, you hear all the time, social media is good, social media is bad. I kind of see it as not necessarily being good or bad. Obviously, user behavior can be good or bad. Now, there has been quite a bit of information that's come out over the last few years about the dangers of advertising and getting your news feeds, differing news feeds based on what your preferences are, right? So, you know, artificial intelligence will kind of select certain types of advertisements and news stories to share with you based on your past behavior. But if, you know, ultimately it's up to each individual to decide if they want to use an online platform for social support or not. That expands beyond just social media. So I wanted to kind of getting to the home stretch of this talk to provide a little bit more kind of timely research. This was just published last year from the Pew Research Center related to COVID-19. So the data we're looking at here, they asked, and this is all Americans, United States citizens, they ask if technology has been a lifeline for you during the coronavirus outbreak. And so starting at the top, we see that 90% have reported that the internet in general has been essential or important for them personally during the pandemic. 81% say that they have ever talked with others using via video calls, like the Zoom technology we're using for this week's conference. And then 40% say that they've used digital technology or the internet in any new or different ways since the beginning of the pandemic. The bottom three numbers are related to some downsides of technology during the pandemic. 40% say that they've often or sometimes feel worn out or fatigued from spending time on video calls. 33% say that they've tried to cut back on the amount of time they spend on the internet or their smartphone at some point during the pandemic. And 26% say that they're worried a lot or some about paying for their high-speed internet connection at home or over the next few months. Next slide has some data related to the digital interactions. As you can see, the majority of Americans report that while digital technology has served as a lifeline for them, it's not the same as in-person contact. But about 2/3 say that that technology has been useful, just not as a replacement. And so you see the breakdowns here are, it has it between race, age, and education as well. And then 71% of adults say that text messaging or group messaging apps have helped them at least a little to stay connected with family, friends during the pandemic. So this slide shows kind of the ranks from text messaging at the top to voice calls, video calls, social media sites, and then at the bottom is email. So as we get near the end of my talk here, I wanted to give kind of what I call a shameless plug for Crew. I'm not sure if I click this link, if you'll still be able to see my screen share. Let's see, Dr. Black, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can you see the web page?
You'll need to share the new window.
I'm sorry?
You'll need to share the Crew window instead of your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He's right.
Okay. So let's see here. I think I'll have to stop my share here. Since that web page is opened up.
Yeah, I think you after you hit share screen, you can click. There you go.
See it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I mentioned I was teaching in the UK a few years ago, and I was looking for some colleagues over there to begin doing some collaborative work. And so that's kind of where I see this research going in the future, is doing some cross-cultural comparisons of how social media, online platforms in general, have either been beneficial or detrimental. And so this group that I'm affiliate of now, we actually have one of their researchers will be doing a presentation, I believe, later this week. I believe it's on Friday. Chris Fullwood, who's one of the directors of this program. And I just wanted to give a plug for them because they've got, if you're interested in cyber psychology, so I'm currently teaching some undergraduate courses in intro to psychology, and those students, 100% of them have never heard of cyber psychology. So this is a really good place to start if any of you out there listening to this presentation might be interested in the work.
Hey, Trey.
Yes.
Dr. Fullwood, he is presenting Friday at 11.
Friday 11, thank you. And I believe I'll be introducing him, so I need to know that. So, you know, as I mentioned at the outset with my presentation, we've just been doing some simple survey research with my undergraduate students. My philosophy with mentoring students is I want them to be able to explain statistical procedures that we use when we present at a conference and so on and so forth. So some of the research that the other crew members do is much more complex. It gets into, as you can see here, we have like some virtual reality studies that are going on with that group and so on and so forth. And it's become quite an international research group. So there's a lot of information here. If you were interested in perhaps studying abroad, they do take students from all over the country in their program. What's really interesting about the University of Wolverhampton, this is in England, by the way, they have this department that is solely focused on cyberpsychology. So unlike here in the US, you might have an experimental psychology program like I went to that has different specialty areas in it, like social psychology or biopsychology or cognitive, what have you. But this is all they do at Wolverhampton in this particular department, I should say. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, Dr. Fullwood this Thursday at 11 will be talking about some of his research that he's done. And I've been fortunate to kind of ride their coattails and participate in a few of their studies and a book that we published a few years ago. So please, if you have any interest in this general topic, reach out to these folks. They're happy to collaborate and give you more information if you wanted to visit their campus and so on and so forth. Okay. So I think I didn't quite make the 45-minute mark, but that's all I have for you all. So I'm ready for questions.
Well, thank you so much. So to all of our participants and anybody here, please use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen to post any questions, or you can post them straight into the chat, as I kind of did. I was actually just going to make a comment that when you were talking about the family, or when you were talking about the supportive services for spouses, there's a service called Family Support, and this is for spouses. And I was involved in this group. I was a spouse for many years, but and as a former spouse, I always knew that I could meet. I mean, the people that were around me, our housing was kind of, close. So, but I had the support of most any spouse that was there. And so you always knew you could call, you could talk to them. And I think that's probably why your statistic was so high.
Right.
But,
yeah. Thanks for that resource. I had the chat closed, but yeah, I see your comment now.
That's okay. I didn't mean to send it, but okay. And another question, when you were talking about the texting and that the groups that like, the texting because of COVID and not meeting personally, did you do any research with the different age groups, like those under 30 as opposed to over 50?
No, we haven't. That Pew report that I cited, they have some of that data in their report. We do know, I mentioned the book that I was involved with, an edited book with the crew group, the Wolverhampton group. And my chapter was actually on the digital divide. So we definitely, we know that that people, I don't recall the actual cutoff age, but definitely up through about middle school into high school, you see that texting is the preferred mode of communication for those kids, for sure. I don't think that's changed much.
Yeah, that's why I just thought maybe it was a good stat to look at. But
yeah, one of the things that we want to do, or that I want to do moving forward, if I can find some students that will help out with it, is start to compare these different modes of communication. So we would take texting into account, some of the things that have already been done. But I'm also interested in kind of comparing how beneficial it's been based on the country that you're in, and even within the US, what state that you're in, because we've had different lockdown requirements in different states, much less different countries. And to use that as another variable in terms of how long things were kind of locked down, what kind of mandates were in place and those types of things.
That's productive. That's good.
It's a lot of moving parts to that. But that's
Yeah.
kind of where I want to go. COVID obviously is a pretty hot topic with mental health in general these days. So somebody's
Well,
already probably has started looking into that.
So where for all these, like you did give that, which we have that speaker on Friday, but where can everybody find more information on this study and even the focuses of your research?
I can, I don't have the link. I didn't put it on the PowerPoint for the Pew Research study. But it's just basically, I just gathered that information yesterday to add on to this talk. If you just do a Google search for Pew, P-E-W research, right? It's in their September 2021 report where that data came from.
But thank you so much. I appreciate you coming and talking about all this, and I look forward to more of your research, especially.